Number 1 is the first locomotive to have operated in New South Wales, Australia, on the 29th of March 1855. Ordered by the Syndey Railway Company from Robert Stephenson Co of Newcastle upon Tyne in Britain on the 4th of March 1853, Number 1 and her 3 sisters were built to a design of James McConnell, the consulting engineer of the Syndey Railway, and who was also the locomotive engineer of the Southern Division of the LNWR. The design of Number 1 was based on McConnell's earlier 060 Wolverton Goods class, but reconfigured as an 042. She was classified as a mixed traffic locomotive. Number 1 has cylinders measuring 16 by 24 inches and 5 feet 6 inch diameter coupled wheels. Her boiler has a working pressure of 120 psi. Her tender carries 4 tons of coal and 2,000 imperial gallons of water. In working order, she weighs 46 tons 900 weight 1/4 with a tractive effort of 8,900 pounds. Number 1 arrived dismantled by ship in Australia on the 13th of January 1855, and her components were hauled by horses to workshops at Everley, where she was assembled. Number 1 made her first moves under steam the 29th of March 1855 as far as Newtown. Unbelievably, water for the occasion was supplied by the local milkman at 13 cents a cartload. Thereafter, Number 1 was used in ballast duties to complete the Syndey Railway from Syndey to Parramatta. On various inspection trips, Number 1 was found able to haul loads of 150 tons, although in regular service the maximum loading was 110 tons. 3 basically similar 042s were later ordered from William Fairbairn and Sons of Manchester in 1857. The Syndey Railway came under New South Wales government control on the 12th of September 1855 and was officially opened on the 26th of September 1855. The first train was hauled by Number 3, departing at 9 a.m. This was followed by the official train headed by Number 2, and then Number 4 hauled the 12 noon service train. Number 1, however, was in such a state of disrepair so as to miss the festivities. Sadly, the design proved too heavy for the light Barlow rails used on the Syndey Railway, and on the 10th of July 1858, Number 1 was involved in a fatal accident due to defective track work. 2 passengers were killed and 13 more were injured. Thereafter, Number 1 and her sisters were confined to God's work. There was little protection from the weather or the hot sun for the crew until about 1865, when corrugated iron roofs were fitted. All 4 locomotives were increasingly worn out by the early 1870s. In 1874, the New South Wales Government Railways ordered a set of new plate frames for numbers 1 to 4. But rather than rebuild these old locomotives with new frames, the frames, together with the 4 old tenders, were instead used to build 4 new locomotives in 1877. Number 1 made her final run on the 15th of March 1877 and was withdrawn following an accident on that day which severely damaged its frames. She had run a total of 156,542 miles. Numbers 3 and 4 were withdrawn and scrapped in the same year, whilst Number 2 lasted a little longer, being used as a shunter in Syndey Yard until 1879. The historical significance of Number 1 was marked by its presentation to the Museum of Applied Arts and Sciences for public display in May 1884. However, it's not really clear whether the locomotive now on display in Sydney's Powerhouse Museum is really Number 1. The New South Wales Government Railway reported at the end of 1877 that numbers 1, 3 and 4 had all been broken up. It is highly likely that the locomotive on display is the remains of Number 2, which had stood derelict minus its tender at Everley Railway Workshops for many years. It's likely the locomotive on display is a composite, using components from numbers 1 and 2, but carrying the works plates from Number 1. Whatever the case, Number 1 is a jewel of Australian steam preservation and well worth a visit. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you have, please leave a comment below. Please also like, share and subscribe. Thanks also to my Patreon supporters who help keep me running and whose generous support has enabled me to buy a new PC and recording equipment. I would also like to thank Martin Hartley for help in researching this video. And I look forward to seeing you all next time on Rail Story.